we've still got people filtering in, but I think it might be good to make a start, as there's already lots of you here, and we've got a great list of speakers up ahead, and we want to leave plenty of time for everyone's voice to be heard. So welcome once again, and thank you for joining us. It's great to see so many people here with us, and we've been blown away already by the support for in the past couple of weeks that we've received. We have apologies from some groups tonight, including allies at COVID Action UK, who've signed the manifesto, as tonight we actually observe 3 years since the UK entered its first lockdown. And with everything that's followed that in terms of hardship, loss, avoidable deaths, and rising poverty as well, we're here tonight with a message of hope and solidarity as well, with the Energy For All Manifesto, an energy pricing revolution for cheaper, greener, and fairer energy pricing to meet everyone's needs. We've already received over 100 signatures from organisations, institutions, political representatives, and we've also had plenty of people signing as individuals too, including perhaps some of you, which is great because now we can send you emails, and we'll also be sending out some tools in the next few days asking you to contact your MP. In fact, we'll be posting some of those tonight, I think. So we've got plenty of supporters to hear from tonight, so I think we'll dive right in. Just for people joining us, you can continue to introduce yourself in the chat. I think you should be unable to unmute, but we ask everyone to keep themselves muted when speakers are talking, and you can also use the chat to ask any questions or raise any issues, and somebody will do their best to get to you. You can use reactions at the bottom right if you want to applaud speakers, anything like that. And I think at the top right, you can also go on to speaker view if that's better for you, rather than sort of gallery view of everyone. And our first speaker of the evening is someone that most of you will know, one of Fuel Poverty Action's founding members and co-director, a pioneer behind the concept of Energy for All, and someone who's always kept radical and visionary demands at the heart of FPA's work. So please welcome Ruth London. Over to you. And you'll need to unmute yourself, Ruth, sorry.
Bit basic, isn't it? 5 years ago, Fuel Poverty Action started promoting this idea that some energy should be free. The energy we all need. Sorry, I'm bothered by the fact that somebody's put a note that the passcode could hinder many people from logging in. And my own husband can't log in because he says he doesn't have the passcode. So maybe it might be possible for someone on this to actually send out the passcode again.
Yeah, we have a tech crew. Ruth, you carry on. We'll sort it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so 5 years ago, we started promoting this idea that some energy should be free. That is the energy that we all need for our basic needs. Revolutionary? Maybe, but this change is both necessary and possible. It's necessary because people are dying of cold and hunger, especially if we're old or disabled. And millions more, from children on up, are living miserable, unhealthy lives, sometimes without power for kids to do their homework, sometimes without light. And it is possible because there is plenty of money. Yes, some people are having to cut down their energy use to the bone and still paying huge standing charges. But there are others, and I'm not joking, who are actually heating their stables. There is plenty of money there. More than that, the money that we need to keep warm and feed our children is now being sucked up out of our homes to feed energy corporations' profits. And these profits are invested in more fossil fuels, more of the fuels that are so expensive, so polluting, and so bad for the climate that they're actually threatening life on Earth. That is happening when renewable energy is between 4 and 9 times cheaper. Instead of renewables, this fossil fuel industry is being subsidized by the UK government to the tune of millions of pounds every day. There is plenty of money there. So Energy for All will be paid for by higher tariffs for extravagant energy use, by higher windfall taxes, and an end to these fossil fuel subsidies. It is designed for each household to get free energy according to its needs, because our needs are not all the same. They vary dramatically with our age, our health, and our housing conditions. Beginning with our needs will give us security, whatever happens to international prices. And beginning with our needs will incentivize the government to turn to cheaper, cleaner, renewable energy sources and incentivize them to insulate our homes. This is an alternative to the government's so-called generous policies, which are in fact another form of generous fossil fuel subsidy paid through our bills. It is also an alternative to the plan that's now being put forward by some charities for a social tariff based on means testing, which Energy for All is not. Energy for All is universal. You won't lose it when you get above the breadline, but it will mean much higher bills for Rishi Sunak with his private pool. It is universal and targeted at the same time. Energy for All is one form of rising block tariff, higher prices for higher usage, which Chaitanya from New Economics Foundation, NEF, will tell you about in a minute. In the past year, this idea has taken off, as well as a petition with 650,000 signatures and a poll where 75% of the population were in favor. We've been gathering support from big organizations, small organizations, but also big ones like the TUC. Their speakers sent apologies for tonight. But until now, the proposal still hadn't been costed. We'd been trying for years to find economists to check that Energy for All is practical. And I can tell you now, we were quite relieved when NEF finally crunched the numbers and proved that a scheme like this is totally doable. Our proposal goes further than NEF's model does in meeting needs, but we're working closely with NEF. We're both determined to turn energy pricing right side up, so it's not the people who are heating their homes for 1 hour a day who pay the highest price. There are other injustices in the energy system, and we've tried to address these in the manifesto. The worst is housing, that all this hugely expensive heat flies right out of leaky window frames, lofts, and walls, and the damp seeps in. UK housing is a scandal, and it has to be fixed in a way that is safe, non-flammable, non-toxic, and appropriate to the building and to its residents. Another injustice is prepayment meters. It's a great victory that we finally stopped them making us pay more for the privilege of lending them money by paying in advance. And it's also fantastic that they've stopped breaking into people's homes to force you onto a prepayment meter just because you haven't been able to pay their impossible prices. That was a long, hard fight in the streets and in the conference rooms, and we've won it for the moment, but it's not secure yet. They will try again. Another injustice is the many gross discrepancies that mean, for example, that people without gas in all electric housing pay 3 times as much for heat, and that households on district heating schemes are excluded from protection because they are classed as a business. And itinerant communities miss out, like they miss out on so many things, and that people in one part of the country pay much more than others. So the averages that you hear, 2,500 a year, these averages may have nothing to do with your own reality. All of this is in the manifesto that many of you have now signed. The manifesto is a way of gathering and showing support, but it's also a way of spreading support. Please share it, speak for it from your own situation, student, health worker, whatever. And please, above all, press MPs to support it as well, to make it a reality sooner than later. MPs of all parties, that is. Last week, we were asked by the Metro newspaper, do you think this cost of living crisis will ever end? And we said yes, because it's not caused by lack of money. It's caused by our resources being taken from us. I almost said stolen, but some heists are legal. We said, this crisis is not inevitable. It will end when people refuse to put up with it anymore. And I'm glad to say that that is beginning to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And you'll all be pleased to know Ruth has already booked in her holiday, I think starting tomorrow, as of most of us in the coming weeks. So we'll try not to burn the house down while you're away, Ruth. Thanks for everything you've been doing. And I think we've been joined by our next speaker. Ruth mentioned pressuring your MPs to sign up, and we now have the first MP who has signed on to the manifesto, which we're thrilled about. Someone who sponsored a private members bill at Westminster demanding a universal basic energy allowance, one of our parliamentary champions for Energy for All. Many thanks and welcome to the MP for Norwich South, Clive Lewis.
Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, my camera is on. I'm actually walking home at the moment, so I'm doing this in transit, so please forgive me. I really just wanted to give this group, first of all, say thank you for inviting me. Secondly, thank you for an absolutely brilliant campaign. It's a fantastic turnout tonight. I can see that, one of the best I've been to for some time now. And I think that's because this campaign speaks to people's lived experience. And I think there's also a deep understanding that this cuts into the very basics of what it is to live in a civilized society and economy where people have access to energy. It's a basic essential. I just wanted to very quickly talk about the private members bill. We have made progress with this, and I wanted to update you on that. So just to recap on what the private members bill is, it's a universal block tariff, which basically means every family, every household in the country would receive a chunk of hopefully renewable energy. We've been doing discussions with the Labour front bench on that. And from that, that should cover a good proportion of the average family's usage. After that, obviously, it does fall off a bit of a cliff edge and prices go up. But that's where the second part of the bill comes in, which is a social tariff. And that would basically bring in a progressive element to energy. So those with the least pay the least, and those with the most pay more for their energy, a progressive component to paying our bills. And the final bit is obviously the mass retrofit program to make sure that everyone's house is built up to a warm standard, a passive home standard, hopefully very soon in the near future. I think there's one other thing I wanted to just kind of convey with this. The Labour Party front bench, I've been in talks with them, with Adam Whitehead, who is very supportive and he's drawing up their own plans for this. Been working very closely with the New Economics Foundation to crunch through some of the numbers, some of the difficulties with applying this policy. And I think that the Labour front bench are making good progress. I think the jury's out on what it will look like when it's announced in the next few months, and we can see that. But I think we're pushing on an open door, and we've established the principle that something is broken, something needs to be fixed, and that what we're calling for is the answer. So that's the good news, and let's see what they come up with. I think the other thing for us is that on the doorstep, in our campaigns, talking to people, one of the things I'm coming across, and you've probably seen it too, is that from the right of politics, the hard right, both in this country and across the world, is this notion that green energy is costly energy. It's costing people too much, and we need to get rid of the green crap, take out more oil, and basically that's the way forward. That's how you get cheap bills. We know that that's a recipe for disaster. And one of the great things about this bill is that what it actually says to people, we can say wind energy, solar energy, renewables, you're going to get a massive block of this free for your family. And that's a massive retail offer, something which puts paid to these arguments that renewable energy is a scam. And I think that's really important in the coming months, weeks and years. So that's the update. I'll keep you posted. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you for letting me be part of this campaign. And I look forward to achieving some real goals in the coming weeks, months and years ahead. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you for fighting our corner in Parliament and the front bench of the Labour Party too. We look forward to hearing more. And next up, we'll be introducing a group that's been referenced already. One of the groups we've worked with most closely around this concept. We've got slightly different proposals and approaches, and perhaps different resources and skill sets at our disposal. But of course, there's a lot more uniting us than dividing us, and we look forward to working together productively for a long time. So welcome from the New Economics Foundation, Head of Environment and Green Transitions, Chaitanya Kumar.
Excellent. Thank you so much to Ruth and Clive. I mean, both Clive and Ruth have covered the essentials and gave a very passionate sort of statement on why we need Energy for All, and the underlying model for how we produce, pay, tax, distribute energy needs to radically change. And we believe we have the answers. And we believe we have the principles that should underpin any new model that emerges out of this crisis. and it's up to us to try and push our elected leaders to make sure that becomes reality. So I was really hoping we would have a paper published by today, so I could speak in more detail. Having said that, I've only been given 2 to 3 minutes, so I'll try and keep this brief. The report, which is imminent, which should be out early next week now. I'll make sure to circulate the copy once it's out. But what the report talks about is pushing forward what we're calling a national energy guarantee. For a variety of reasons, we've chosen that phrase. There are 4 key objectives that we've laid out in the report, and what we say should underpin the new model for how we pay for energy. The first is ensuring an essential energy to all households, as we've discussed, and not just those with financial means. Regardless of circumstance, regardless of where you live, I think everybody has a fundamental right to a basic level of energy that sustains their daily consumption. The second is resilience and stability to withstand shocks. What we've realized ultimately is our over-reliance on fossil fuels, especially natural gas, has led us to this situation, has made us very vulnerable to these sort of price shocks. And unfortunately, the current trend that we're on, when the government talks about more hydrogen from natural gas and reliance on more technologies like carbon capture and storage, they're locking us into a model where we will continue for several years and decades to come on this highly volatile fossil fuel, natural gas. So that is something we just can't afford to do, and therefore we need to shift towards clean energy. The third is fairness. At its core, I think it's fundamental. The current energy system, especially the energy tariff system, isn't fair. For example, when suppliers go bust, and many of them have, we have to pick up the tab. As Ruth mentioned, there's a lot of regional disparity. Those in London might pay slightly differently to those in the Northeast compared to the Southwest. There's regional disparities already, and they're set to get worse if current proposals go forward. Prepayment meters is another issue that hopefully we made progress on. And the fact that, the way the energy system is evolving right now, there are good elements where people are adopting more solar panels, more electric vehicles, which is all good. But as we all know, a lot of that adoption is very much in the upper income end of our society, which means they get to go off the grid, and the cost of the grid then gets distributed to the rest of us. So in a very perverse way, we end up picking the tab for so the good habits that we would like to see, obviously, in richer households, but nonetheless, we pick up the tab of the rest of the system. So fairness is very important. And the final thing is giving the right green signals. I think we're doing very little when it comes to incentivizing energy efficiency and charging more for what we would call luxury energy, as Ruth mentioned, heating your stables or heating your swimming pools. With these 4 principles in mind, we went ahead and did some modeling on what a rising block tariff or a national energy guarantee could look like. And ultimately, the 2 headlines that I can give you right now is, in the model that we've run, roughly 90% of the bottom income groups, by which I mean the bottom 30% of income group, benefit from the scheme. And they roughly benefit by about £300 to £400 savings. And this is based on prices in 2021. Now, as Ruth mentioned, we agree windfall taxes should be recycled to actually fund this scheme. If we added on top of what I've just mentioned, another £9 billion, which is what we expect to gather from windfall taxes next year in 2024, the average household in that bottom income group could save roughly £1,100 to £1,200. So that is a significant saving on energy bills that we can expect if we run the scheme as we've designed at this point. Ultimately, the purpose is we need those 4 principles. We need to ensure that luxury energy is charged at a higher rate, and we need to have some sort of cross-subsidy in the system where high energy users end up paying more and therefore have the incentive to set up renewables or undertake energy efficiency, and ensuring that lower income groups, especially those that end up consuming more because of stability or because of other factors, are actually protected much more in the scheme, which is what we embed as well. So we were very glad when we ran the models. A lot of the groups out there pushed back and said, you'll miss out on a lot of families and groups that are low income but consume a lot of energy. But we believe we've, to a good degree, it's not a perfect system, but to a good degree, I think we have addressed that question as well. So for colleagues on this call who will have more questions on the model, the back end, what's gone into it, what assumptions have been made, I'm happy to pick up once the report is published, which is quite imminent. So I'll pause there and pass it back to you, Stu.
Thanks so much, Titania. Yeah, it's really positive to hear that the economics around an idea like this could work, and we really look forward to seeing the report in full. So now we'll welcome a long-time ally of FPA in Parliament, a staunch supporter of climate and social justice ideals from the local to international level as well. Caroline's already co-sponsored the Energy Equity Commission bill that Clive talked about, and we very much hope you'll support the manifesto as well. So welcome Caroline Lucas, MP for Brighton Pavilion.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight, and really congratulations on all of your brilliant work so far on this. It's a real pleasure. Completely support the manifesto, and are really excited to hear all of the work that's going on around it. Congratulations to Ruth, and Titania's also obviously been doing some fantastic work on this as well. I think it should shame us all that in the 6th largest economy in the world, households up and down the UK are facing fuel poverty and literally unbearable choices between essential needs right now. And you'll know that in last week's budget, we saw the government forced into action in terms of freezing the energy price guarantee, but they're still freezing it at £2,500. That is a hell of a lot. So even with that freeze, bills will still rise by almost 20% in April. 7.5 million households will be in fuel poverty. You know, they'll be sleeping in cold, damp homes, worrying about how they're going to pay the bills, while at the same time, fossil fuel companies are doubling down on new oil and gas, raking in record profits, whilst our precious planet is in crisis. So I think we need to say loudly and clearly that the climate criminals whose insatiable greed costs us all have to be brought to account, that the status quo is intolerable and the time to change it is now. So as we've already heard from all of the speakers so far, it couldn't be clearer that our energy system is broken, it's in desperate need of radical reform. The forcible installations of prepayment meters were an utter scandal and have really, really been shocking. And with energy companies forcing vulnerable households onto higher rates against their will, sometimes literally breaking into their homes. And yet, as usual, the government was slow to act, only now ending the energy premium paid by households on prepayment meters. So I'd say that a temporary ban on forcible installations isn't enough. We need not just a full review of the whole prepayment system to make sure it's fair and actually fit for purpose. We need a wider reform of our energy bills. We need nothing less, frankly, than a total transformation of our energy system. Energy is not a nice to have, it is an essential need. And so I do welcome proposals for a free energy allowance so that every family can heat their homes and can feed their kids. That should not be a choice that you have to make to do one or the other. The second thing I want to say is that it's essential that bills are brought down permanently. And it is just such a madness, really, that the government has abjectly failed to embrace energy efficiency again and again, when it remains the cheapest and quickest way to slash our reliance on expensive gas and to protect people into the long term. It would transform our homes from being amongst the leakiest in Europe to actually being livable and comfortable. Ministers have failed to deliver the nationwide street by street home insulation programme and retrofit programme, which just makes common sense. It would get people's bills down, it would get climate emissions down, it would create hundreds of thousands of jobs. Instead, we know that bills are almost £10 billion higher than they would have been if the government had not decided, in the words of David Cameron, to cut the green crap over 10 years ago. That is costing taxpayers and bill payers dearly, and it's a scandal. And thirdly and finally, the government must put an end to our fossil fuel addiction. As households struggle to make ends meet and our planet burns, it kind of beggars belief that the government is doubling down on the very thing which is at the heart of both of these crises. You know, that the UK is set to grant over 100 licenses to explore more oil and gas in the North Sea, that right now ministers are considering approving the Rosebank oil field, which would create more CO2 than the combined emissions of 28 low-income countries. They're handing companies a massive loophole in the windfall tax. We need a windfall tax, of course we do, but the one that they've got has got a grotesque loophole in its heart, which means that if those oil and gas companies invest their profits in getting out even more oil and gas, then they get refunded over £91 in every £100 of the tax they're meant to be paying. That also means the Treasury is losing the equivalent sum of money which could have been giving an inflation matching pay rise to every NHS worker and teacher for a year. And that does give me to my very final point, because I appreciate time is short, but I just want to say that the climate crisis and the cost of living scandal are not inevitable. They are a consequence of political choices. And we need to make sure that our government starts making different choices. They could choose to ensure that no one faces the injustice of fuel poverty. They could choose to leave the fossil fuel age behind us. They could choose to create warm and decent homes, to deliver thousands of green jobs and embrace abundant renewable energy. So it's down to us to make sure they do. This manifesto is part of that endeavour, as is this meeting. I'm really excited by Clive's Universal Energy Bill, which is a spin-off of the Green New Deal bill, which we've worked on together. I'm really sorry I can't stay for the full meeting, but I'm so pleased that it's happening. I want to congratulate everyone who's been part of it.
Thank you so much, Caroline. It's great to see already across all the speakers that theme that we have the same solutions to both these crises. They're not in opposition to one another. We can address them as one. And that's been Fuel Poverty Action's message for about 12 years now. And now many more people have taken it on. So that leads us on to our next speaker, which is some of our partners. Holly Rowden is the political working group lead at the Warm This Winter Coalition, to which Fuel Poverty Action is affiliated. The coalition has helped to bring together climate as well as poverty, anti-poverty groups to a level that FPA has always kind of dreamed would be possible. Warm This Winter doesn't seem to be going anywhere as we enter spring, and are building plans to ramp up pressure on the government in April. So welcome, Holly.
Thanks, Stu. And yeah, great to be here with you all. And yeah, at the risk of just echoing and agreeing with everything that Caroline and other speakers have just said, yeah, I'll give a bit of an overview of Warm This Winter and our upcoming plans. So yeah, as Stu said, Warm This Winter is a coalition campaign supported by over 40 leading, sorry if you can hear the background noise from my flat, over 40 leading charities from across the UK. This includes environmental organisations and charities, and also fuel poverty campaigners. And we also have a campaign in Wales as well. And again, echoing a lot of the reflections that have been shared already, this campaign really sprang from a shared recognition that our energy system is completely broken and is not fit for people or for the planet, and that our dependence on fossil fuels is at the very core of the energy crisis and the cost of living crisis. You know, bills were already unaffordable for millions even before we saw the kind of soaring gas prices that we've seen over the last couple of years. And as Caroline highlighted just now, even with the support that the government has provided, people will still be paying double what they were paying 2 years ago. And from the 1st of April, everyone will still be paying more for their energy bills, which is just, yeah, it can't go on like that any longer. And what is clear is that what government has done does not go far enough, that there's a real lack of any proper long-term plan to address the root causes of the crisis and ensure that everyone can access affordable energy. So we have kind of 4 campaign demands, echoing a lot of what's in the manifesto. Firstly, targeting extra financial support for people that can't afford to heat their homes. And this includes tackling the UK's growing household energy debt, which the End Fuel Poverty Coalition and Debt Justice have estimated will rise to 2.7 billion from April. Secondly, we're calling for a properly funded programme of home insulation and home upgrades starting with the homes of those hardest hit by this crisis, to really improve energy efficiency and make sure that that heat isn't wasted. Thirdly, investing more and rapidly expanding renewable energy sources like wind and solar power to make sure that there's better access to cheap energy and can really bring energy bills down. And finally, really ending our dependence on fossil fuels and stopping the subsidising of oil and gas companies. And that includes removing the investment allowance in the windfall tax, which has been estimated to cost the UK public 11 billion. And as Caroline highlighted, there are much more important things that money could go towards. So back in December, we had a day of action, which saw communities across the UK come together, and we had over 40 events happening to really kind of highlight the scale of the problem and the desire for action from government. Our next big mobilisation is in a week's time on Saturday, the 1st of April, which is the day that energy bills will go up for everyone. And we've organised a day of mass lobbying activity to really demand lasting change from government. We have over 60 events, MP meetings, photo actions happening across the UK. And we've also launched an MP pledge to go alongside that, which I should say a cross-party group of MPs, including Caroline, have already shown their support for. So I'll put a link to that mass lobby in the chat if people want to find out more and get involved. The more the merrier. But yeah, thank you to Fuel Poverty Action for inviting me to speak, and it's really great to be here to show support and solidarity for the amazing work that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly. And yeah, we're really grateful for all that Warmest Winter has achieved and helped us to achieve in the past few months as well. And some of the affiliated groups to the coalition that have already signed the manifesto include End Fuel Poverty Coalition, Possible, Parents for Future, Debt Justice, High Peak for a Green New Deal, and Uplift as well. So please join the mass lobby. The link should be in the chat. And also look out for Fuel Poverty Action on the streets on April 1st, where we'll be joined by allies, including local branches of Unite the Union. We've seen the importance of strong trade unions, of course, during the poverty crisis we've experienced, and we can celebrate a major win this week for the RMT workers at Network Rail after a long and high-profile dispute. Now we welcome our first trade union speaker from a sector where some of the most precarious and low-paid workers are fighting back to ensure everyone has their basic provisions and needs met. Ian Hodson is the National President of the Bakers, Food and Allied Workers Union. Welcome, Ian.
Can you hear me now? I thought I'd unmuted myself. Some people would say that's the best way I could be. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and it's really great to be taking part in this launch. I think it's a very important launch of your manifesto. I think it will certainly make a huge difference to the lives of the people who are in my trade union. The other thing I would add is, you know, that obviously alongside your manifesto, I think one of the most important campaigns that we also need to be part of is the fact that if we don't own it, we can't control it. So we must take it back into national ownership too. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have covered a lot of the stuff around the energy crisis that so many are facing. You know, and I think it's right that we have to oppose this social order in which it's possible for one man to do absolutely nothing useful, but to amass a great fortune, whilst men and women who work all the days of their lives can barely earn enough to scratch out a wretched existence. Yesterday, we saw food prices impacting inflation with some of the biggest increases in the often referred to budget area of food, which is a deliberate choice to target some of the most vulnerable people in our society by these greedy supermarkets to squeeze the working class even further. We saw the cost of our energy rising to such unaffordable levels that people can no longer afford to boil a potato, let alone cook a meal, in the fifth richest economy on the planet. And what is the government's response been? Oh, to talk about small boats stoking the flame of division and hate, freeing the banks and raising interest rates, increasing the mortgage and rents of people already struggling. You know, like I say, I do welcome this launch tonight, but I think we also need to unite with the other campaigns that are happening in our workplaces and in our community. You know, I often use a statement which says intelligent discontent is the mainspring of civilization. Progress is born out of agitation, and it's agitation or stagnation. What does that mean? It means we need to organise our workplaces, our communities, to be prepared to take to the streets. It means we must make demands of politicians. And I know there's a number of politicians, good politicians, that are on this call tonight, but they're not all the same. And I think we have to get cleverer in how we use our collective strength as a class. And we must make sure that our votes are used collectively. We can impact every seat. We must learn that for democracy to mean anything, then it means people must be at the centre of it. If a politician wants to support our class, our reasonable demands should be met. And I think it's not unreasonable, you know, when a politician comes knocking on your door to say, do you support this charter? Do you agree that we need 1 million new council homes building in the UK? Would you be prepared to support and enshrine the right to food into legislation so we can stop people suffering from food poverty? Do you agree that we should abolish 0 hours contracts and abolish youth rates? And do you agree that no worker should be earning less than £15 an hour? Because if they can't meet those reasonable demands, then they don't deserve our support, and they shouldn't get our vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ian. Our demands are, of course, very reasonable, as a wise quote once said. Yeah, we now have apologies from one of our speakers who was meant to be joining us. Anne McLaughlin, MP for Glasgow North East, has been working with us closely in the past few months, particularly around campaigning for a ban on disconnections in the UK, as well as an end to the forced installation of prepayment meters. Anne had to cancel at late notice, unfortunately, but has sent us a short statement, which I believe I am to read out as the only representative north of the border tonight, after all. So here is Anne's statement for you. I can't tell you how excited I am to be part of a growing movement that asserts that people have the right to an energy supply and that it's all of our responsibility to ensure they get it. My main focus has been on prepayment meters, and my feeling at the start of my campaign was get this sorted out and then look at the fundamental inequalities to the supply of energy. I had forgotten how frustratingly slow governments can be. To me, it was straightforward. The first thing I wanted was the UK government to agree to was that so-called self-disconnection would stop. It's hardly self-disconnection if it happens against your will and purely because you have no money that day. Then I thought we'd move on to sorting out the fact that those on prepayment meters pay more than everyone else. But the issue of people being forced onto prepayment meters reared its ugly head, and we watched as people who were very obviously vulnerable found themselves against Ofgem regulations being forced to switch. There is movement on all of this, but the job of the all-party parliamentary group on prepayment meters, which I founded and chair, is to speed it all up and ensure that we don't let the government away with fixing one of the problems while the others exist. So we're on it, and we'll keep on it until we win. I'm sorry I can't be there tonight. I had to pull out at the last minute, but I will watch it back because I know the energy and commitment you all have for the Energy for All campaign will be utterly inspiring, and we all like to be inspired. So thank you to Anne. Thank you if you're watching back for those kind words. And I hope you will get a chance to hear from this next speaker, who is one of our international comrades joining us this evening. Maria Campuzano is from the Alianza contra la Pobreza Energética, or the Alliance Against Energy Poverty in Catalonia, where there has been a ban on energy disconnections as well as cancellation of energy debt. Welcome, Maria.
Thanks for the invitation to participate on this event and to give us the opportunity to share our experience fighting against disconnections and debt cancellation in Catalonia. I think our struggles have a lot in common, and we can learn a lot from each other. And I would like to begin with who we are. The Alliance Against Energy Poverty was born in 2014 to fight against water, electricity and gas disconnections in vulnerable households. And we are a movement led by people affected by energy poverty, mainly composed by women. And in Catalonia, we have a law in force since 2015, promoted by a popular legislative initiative. It means that this law is written by people, by social movements, not by political parties. And this law bans disconnection for vulnerable people and has been essential these last 2 years to protect the people who are facing the energy crisis. And in addition, this Catalan law provides a mechanism to cancel the debts of families protected by the ban of disconnections. And thanks to the law, more than 200,000 disconnections have been avoided since its entry into force in Catalan territory. And this law makes it mandatory for supply companies to coordinate with the social services and make sure that the family is not in a vulnerable situation before proceeding with the disconnection. The idea is to change the logic that exists until current days, which is that if someone doesn't pay it, it's because they can do so, not because they don't want to. The main goal is taking the precaution of first checking if person is in a vulnerable situation, and if so, guaranteeing the right to energy. And this is a new and innovative approach which places the responsibility on companies rather than on families who are already in a highly complex situation. And this law also gives tools to the Catalan government to put pressure on energy companies to assume the debt of the families generated with the unpaid bills. And 6 years after our campaign, pressure campaign to Catalan government and to the companies, in March 2021, Endesa, that is take part of the group of Enel, the biggest company that we have in Catalonia, signed an agreement with the Catalan government to cancel the debt to 35,000 vulnerable families. It means 38 million of euros, and Endesa assumed 27 millions, and the rest was assumed by the Catalan government. And I would like to add that although it is not implemented in Spain, but we have learned from our colleagues in neighborhood countries like you that these connections cannot be replaced by prepaid meters, because these prepaid meters stigmatize and put their access to energy even more at risk. So supply disconnections and debt burdens are the most severe expressions of energy poverty, causing major long-term impacts on the physical and mental health families, and these practices should be banned in the rest of the countries, and instead measures like those included in your manifesto should be implemented. Politics should be done in the streets and not in a fancy offices. And I would like to end with full of our solidarity with your campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria. Catalonia really showing the way forward for us, and a great reminder that it's so important to look beyond our borders and what's considered politically acceptable here in the UK as well. So thank you for that. And now, speaking of borders, in fact, and political realities under this government, we welcome another speaker from a trade union which has a number of ongoing disputes with the government. And we, of course, send full solidarity to workers taking strike action at the moment. We're extremely pleased that the Public and Commercial Services Union is the first whole trade union to sign on to the manifesto. PCS has a strong record on issues including climate change, thanks in no small part to the work of our speaker. So welcome to Sam Mason, Sustainability and Climate Change Policy Officer at PCS Union.
Thanks, Stu, and thanks to Fuel Poverty Action for giving us an opportunity to say a few words here. And I'd just like to kind of start out, but when PCS was asked to sign up to this, it's probably one of the quickest returns I've ever had from our National Executive Committee members saying yes, 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 and that's absolutely fantastic. And I think, you know, just not testament to the work that Fuel Poverty has done over the years, but really because of the value of this campaign and manifesto and what it sets out. And I think for us, obviously, as you've said, you know, we're in dispute at the moment around low pay. That's low pay systematically going back a number of years. And, you know, this is working with Fuel Poverty Action and ROOF over the years, we've really used this issue to make the links between some of our climate work, fuel poverty, energy transition and low pay, and that these aren't siloed issues and they're all part of the same coin as well. But I just wanted to say a few things about some of the things we're doing and how it links into this as well. And I think, you know, one of the important things about the Energy For All proposal for us is that it's a very practical step in our long-term global trade union objective of building a programme for a public low-carbon energy future as a framework for the energy transition and for future energy systems. And I think energy systems is an important part because we very rarely actually talk about as part of energy transition as who the energy system serves and what the energy system is for. And obviously at the moment we've heard lots of talk about the profits of the fossil fuel companies, and clearly the energy system is just a cash machine for global corporates, but not just in fossil fuels. And I think we need to be careful that the renewable energy sector is actually modelling themselves within this same kind of corporatized model to reap profits out of the system. So that's why public ownership is very critical for the energy transition as well. But so we're part of this global programme, and the manifesto really speaks to the first part of our trade unions energy programme to fulfil the right to energy, recognising energy as a human right that should be provided as on a basis of a collective public goods, and put obligations on companies, whether they're public or private, to eradicate energy and fuel poverty. And I think, you know, as I said, important for us is that the manifesto resets the question on energy transition to one of meeting this needs alongside wider climate objectives, and fundamental to PCS's position that when we're talking about energy transition, or the just transition word, that this is about transformation and it's rooted in justice for workers and communities. And we'll be happy to take this out to our members and our allies more widely. So, and congratulations to you all.
Thank you so much, Sam. And alongside PCS, the manifesto has been supported by groups, trade union groups, including Campaign Against Climate Change and several trades councils. And we'll also hear from another essential type of union later on tonight. But next, we're joined by one of our staunchest allied groups and individuals as well. Among the first to show support for Energy for All and to sign the manifesto, from the National Steering Committee of Disabled People Against Cuts, please welcome Paula Peters.
Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to thank Fuel Poverty Action for having me speak tonight on behalf of DPAC. I'm really sorry because after I've spoken here, I've got to jump on to a meeting that's happening in Croydon right now. I'm sure all of you have heard that Croydon Council have just announced increases of 15% to council tax, and they're not going to be alone. Obviously, DPAC fully support Fuel Poverty Action's manifesto for Energy for All. For disabled people, you know, we are literally fighting back against life or death, against the energy increases. For the past 13 years, of brutal Tory austerity, disabled people have been making life or death choices, whether they can heat their homes, whether they can eat, whether they have a roof over their heads, because of high benefit sanctions, loss of income with the horrendous work capability assessments, personal independence payments assessments, and obviously the horrendous social care charging. And it has to be said, you know, in the past 12 months, you've got over 66,000 disabled people in social care debt right now, you know, who cannot afford to heat their homes, who cannot afford to eat because they're in social care debt. And when they say cold homes are killing, disabled people are in freezing cold homes with their health deteriorating, unable to use medical equipment or rationing medical equipment of ventilators, you know, can't charge wheelchairs, mobility scooters, you know, can't use, you know, oxygen and everything, putting pressure on the NHS because health is deteriorating. Disabled people are dying as a result of energy companies' greed. What we also need to call for is the renationalisation of energy companies and put an end to shareholders' greed and CEOs' greed, because it is greed that is driving this. And that's why we're fully behind Energy for All. Disabled people should be living in a warm home in dignity and respect. And we demand no less, no less. And I think it's really important, you know, that I'm going to share some facts with you here, that over 1 million disabled people are paying for a prepayment meter or living in poverty. Over 48% of disabled adults have cut back on energy in this past winter, and 41% couldn't afford to keep the home warm. You know, we heard this story of a disabled lady and her daughter who's on a prepayment meter, that was on in arrears with her energy company, didn't know the energy company had switched her over to a prepayment meter, and she lost her power on Christmas Eve. She had no power, she had nothing to cook with, and she had nothing on Christmas Day to feed her daughter or herself, because she didn't know she'd gone over to a prepayment meter. That's an absolute travesty, and that is something we need to hold the energy companies to account for every story like hers. And, you know, we have, you know, 1 in 3 disabled people who are reducing food spending, and obviously many disabled people, you know, have the cheapest food available on budgets. And when you're seeing the increase of budget foods in supermarkets, and in some places it's gone up over 70%, it's an absolute outrage, and supermarkets need to be held to account for that as well. But I think it's so vitally important that we've got to work together and get more people to sign up to this massively important manifesto. But we also need to campaign together about what's coming forwards. And you've seen what's coming in the budget. And for disabled people, that's an absolute travesty. And it's absolutely tragic what the government are planning in the white paper on work, health and disability, because there won't be a support group. They're going to abolish regulations 29 and 35. And basically, no matter how unwell you are, you'll be forced to work. And if you don't, you'll be facing sanctions, and you're just going to see poverty and death rise dramatically on the likes we haven't seen as yet. So I just want to end with this. Disabled people stand in complete solidarity with your present tonight and everyone who couldn't make the meeting tonight. But also, we've got to work together collectively in a unified way and a co-productive way to get rid of this government, but to make sure everyone has enough money to heat their homes, that there's energy for all, that there's sustainable homes, accessible homes, and that we have public services that are not just fit for us to use, but for the generations who come after us. Solidarity, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the meeting. Sorry, I've got to go, and thanks for having me. Solidarity, everyone.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you for joining. And if you yourself have been directly impacted by fuel poverty, then you can always write into us at e4a@fuelpovertyaction.org.uk, yeah, let us know why you are supporting Energy for All, how you think it could impact upon your situation. And we're always looking for people to speak out in the press as well, if that's something you'd be willing to do. Fuel Poverty Action was started and is driven by many members with direct experience of fuel poverty, alongside disabled people, women, people of colour, and particularly pensioners have been an absolute bedrock of our membership in FPA. So now we're pleased to have one of our long-time members, the chair of the Lambeth Pensioners Action Group and the officer on several National Pensioners Convention committees, including chairing the BAME Working Party. Welcome to Ellen Lebethy. And if someone could assist Ellen to get unmuted. Here for a second.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm speaking as a pensioner for pensioners. And I'm also speaking as the chair of the Lambeth Pensioners Action Group, which I've chaired for nearly 2 decades. I'm also speaking for women, and especially the women who are members of the Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, older people's communities. I've said it before, and I want to say it again. Pensioners are not an homogeneous group. Yes, we are pensioners. We are pensioners because we retired at a certain age. But as far as the pensioner groups are concerned, there are differences in our race, our ethnicity, our cultural expectations, our aspirations. We aspire to different things as a diverse pensioners group. So when we are talking about the pensioners and we are designing programs to defend pensioners, to help pensioners, to support pensioners, we need to take this into account. Now, the two big issues, amongst other issues, confronting older pensioners is firstly, pensioner poverty, which is related to the cost of living crisis. The other one is fuel poverty, and they both are in the same category. There are 2.1 pensioners living in poverty across the country. Of those pensioners, Black pensioners as they aspire to and are Black, 30% of our Black pensioner community people are living in poverty. And the number for our Asian community is 33%. So you can already see the disparity between the groups. Furthermore, BAME people, older people especially, are twice as likely to live in poverty as their white counterparts. And this is, as I see it, a disgrace in one of the richest economies in the developed world. How can this be when there's such a lot of money around? And in today's news, we were told that Rishi Sunak has actually paid what is the word? I've forgotten right now, but he's actually paid £1 million on his income. Women, 1 in 5 BAME women live in poverty. Why? Why is there a discrepancy between white women and women from Black, Asian, and minority ethnic groups? I'm going to have to repeat this, and I know you know this. It's because we have always been disadvantaged. That disadvantage is ongoing. It hasn't been dealt with permanently. We've occupied low-paid jobs. We've had experience of discrimination in the workplace, especially in regard to promotion. We know there is a gender pay gap, and we have been part of that gender pay gap. We know that these communities, the Black, Asian, minority ethnic women especially, do not have high pensions. And the reason is that at pensionable age, we've got our pensions, but unfortunately for some of us, we haven't got private pensions. So we are on a low pension in retirement. The other issue that we need to be aware of, that many women in the BAME group have had and have followed their cultural norms. Now, I'm an African, so in my culture, if I was looking after my older mother or father, I would not have depended on Social Security to support me. I would have had to follow the cultural norm And our cultural norm is to do what we call unpaid care. That needs to be taken into account. With regard to the cost of living crisis, it's brought many people misery, ill health, a blighted life in retirement. When we looked to retirement, we didn't look to having to cope with rising fuel bills, rising cost of living, and the lack of just enjoying your retirement after years of work. The cost of living crisis has also made many people having to make the stark choice between heating and eating. Think of that, especially in the cold weather. What is more troubling and what is worse, that there are older people and others who've died as a result of cold-related illnesses caused by damp, poorly insulated homes, and the general conditions under which they live. For pensioners with multiple and also other problems, they need equipment. Some of the equipment is with electricity. And if you are already struggling to pay your bills and you're struggling to keep alive, then having a poor income will in fact affect your life even more. And as I've said, it's a disgrace in the sixth richest economy. But it's also a disgrace that this is happening when energy companies are making eye-watering profits on the backs of people already used in living in limited resources. Energy prices are going to rise by almost 50% next April. Yes, our pensions, the triple lock with regard to pensions has been rescued. But if our energy prices and our cost of living is going to go up by that amount, the amount being £1,865 in April, then the gains that we've made with regard to the triple lock will be wiped out in a stroke. With regard to the injustices, it's been mentioned before, the injustices in the pricing system, this has caused further stress and hardship. And the two that have already been spoken about, which I'm not going to go into again, it's the standing charge, where some people pay more when in fact they use less. There's the scandal of people forced into the prepayment meters, which we've read, and some people have experienced as a living experience. So what we are saying as pensioners who are very angry, we are angry at the government's poor response to the energy crisis. The support that they said they were going to get, the support that they say they are giving, does nothing to alleviate the problems that pensioners are experiencing at the moment. And what we are saying, that there needs to be fundamental change in the pricing system. We need to know that when we reach retirement, it won't be a retirement spent worrying, not enjoying the freedom that you have when you are not working. And for that reason, we are in full support for Energy for All. Solidarity with the ideas, solidarity with the problem, with the policy, and solidarity from pensioners across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. And yeah, thank you for laying out some of those, the layered injustices we see within the system as across all sections of society so well. Thank you for that. FPA has also always had a large network of housing tenants and community groups among our membership, often as a result of direct member involvement in their own local groups. And with myself, my colleague John and others joining in the past year, that network has extended even further. So we're thrilled now to introduce a speaker from the UK's largest tenants union. Welcome Alicia, who is a Leeds branch member of Acorn.
Hi everyone, and thanks Stu, it's really great to be here. Yeah, I'm from Acorn and we're a community union with branches across the UK, and we work to build power through direct and collective action. And this ranges from individual member defence cases to local campaigns. We've been involved in the campaigns to bring the buses into public ownership in Manchester and Liverpool, and we're currently running a campaign in Leeds to see a second homes tax implemented and income ring fenced to repair social housing. But ultimately, defence of tenants against bad landlords is our bread and butter when it comes to building power. Britain's housing stock is not fit for purpose, and currently 23% of private rentals do not meet the decent home standards. That means they're damp, they're mouldy, there's a hazard, and they're cold, and often they're all of those things at once. And this, unsurprisingly, is having a serious effect on people's health and mental well-being, as well as on their finances, as they have to deal with the cost of heating cold and leaky homes. One of our members in Bradford recently joined Acorn after years of trying to get his landlord to repair leaky and rotting windows and doors. He'd contacted his landlord every month for almost 3 years and heard nothing back. And the state of his windows meant that he had to have his heating on all the time to stay warm, and he was dealing with damp and mould. Acorn Bradford planned direct action, and they stormed the property management's offices, forcing them to listen to the tenants' demands and experiences, and essentially secured £20,000 worth of repairs. Our member Mike and his wife Jane should have never had to deal with those conditions in the first place, but those outcomes are a testament of what we can achieve when we use collective and direct action to challenge unfair conditions. As well as supporting individual members, holding landlords and letting agents to account, Acorn is also campaigning for legislative change on a national level. On Tuesday, we were in Parliament lobbying MPs to make sure the long-awaited renters reform bill delivers what it needs to support renters in what they need now, including homes that are of decent standard, are warm, comfortable and adequately insulated. We're also calling on the government to retrofit Britain's leaky and poorly insulated homes, to give local authorities more power and resources to hold private landlords to environmental standards, and ultimately to build social homes that are green and fit for the future. Ultimately, from the cost of living crisis and to the housing crisis to the ecological crisis, it's only through being organised and using our collective power to force change that we'll see the change that we desperately need.
Thank you, Alicia. That was fantastic. And yeah, I couldn't be happier personally that Acorn's sister union, Live and Rent, Scotland's tenants union, my union have already signed on, as well as groups including SHAC's Social Housing Action Campaign, Advice for Renters, Tower Block UK, and we look forward to hearing from Acorn's executive committee as well. So now we welcome a spokesperson for Single Mothers Self-Defence. Kay Chapman is a single mother of 2, active for several decades with Global Women's Strike. Kay has witnessed the sharp end of fuel poverty and how it impacts single mothers, to the point of mothers having their children taken away by social services on the grounds of poverty, including when unable to provide a safe and warm environment for children. So welcome, Kay. Good to have you here.
Great. Well, thank you very much for inviting us to be, part of this meeting. We're very glad to be here. Our Single Mothers Self-Defence is part of the Global Women's Strike and Support Not Separation. and we're campaigning to defend single mothers' entitlement to welfare and for financial recognition for the vital work that we do of raising children and keeping families together. With the Global Women's Strike, we're also calling for a care income for those who care for people and the planet, which would immediately also help to end mothers' and children's poverty. As part of Support Not Separation, it's a coalition, we campaign to end the sexist, anti-working class, racist and arbitrary separation of mothers and their children by social services, violent fathers and the family courts. And our key demand is that they take away our poverty and not our children. We're very glad to support Fuel Poverty Action's manifesto demanding universal free energy for all our basic needs. It would enormously help single mothers and all mums cope with poverty and day-to-day soaring costs of living. We need to be able to turn on the heating, just like everybody's saying, and the lighting, to run a shower, to cook a hot meal, to run a fridge, to wash our kids' clothes, to run a computer and charge and charge phones at home. These are all just essential basics our families need to be healthy, safe, to survive and to thrive. And it's an absolute nightmare for mums not to be able to do these things. Free energy to cover all our essential needs, including those of us with poor health and disabilities, should be an absolute entitlement. I just want to add years of austerity, where 87% of the austerity targeted women in welfare cuts, sanctions, the lowest paid jobs, job losses, homelessness, and increasing destitution, especially for those mums who are seeking asylum, has resulted in half the children in single parent families living in poverty. 70% of single mums already go hungry so children can eat and keep warm. Children with in the poorest areas are 10 times more likely to be in care. Families of colour, immigrant and disabled mothers are particularly targeted. These separations cause lifelong traumas. The Women's Centre where I'm based, which is the Crossroads Women's Centre, has a number of organisations who have also signed up to the manifesto, including the All African Women's Group, the Disabled Mothers' Rights Campaign, Women with Visible and Invisible Disabilities, WINVISIBLE, the English Collective of Prostitutes, Women Against Rape, Women of Colour in the Global Women's Strike and Queer Strike. We have all seen enormous increases in mothers' poverty, destitution, violence, women coming back into sex work or starting it due to the soaring costs of living, mothers who are increasingly being criminalised for poverty, for being labelled unfit, and children are being taken into care. Children in care is at the highest it's almost ever been, which is about 83,000 kids are in care, which is an absolute outrage. And mothers, and now we just heard with the budget that mothers with babies, especially single mothers who are facing Hunt's budget, where they're going to rewrite universal credit, are going to be forcing thousands of us to take low paid work or be sanctioned. As with massive profits made by the energy companies, made by the poverty that they inflict upon us, which people have spoken so well about, the huge private child protection industry just does the same. Energy companies could cap energy prices at source, and the government could decide to give mothers money to end children's poverty. Just to say, we also met on the streets outside Parliament this week, mothers who are on hunger strike against mothers' hunger internationally. And they're finishing tomorrow, but they've been on strike since Mother's Day on Sunday. So, we told them about this as well, that was happening. So yes, so, and just to end with, we just kind of would say power to our movement for free energy, absolutely, and for all. Free energy for all, and for a care income for all the work we do of looking after people and the planet. That would be.
Thank you, Kay. Yeah, it's great to see these things fit together. Really just reorientating what we value in society, I suppose, is part of what we need to do. And yeah, you may have noticed we're running slightly over time, but we now have just a few speakers to go. And next we're coming to another Fuel Poverty Action member who's been active in our group, but also movements like Don't Pay and Extinction Rebellion as well. And more or less any social justice movement that'll let her in. So big shout out to everyone like Alex, who's tries to do absolutely everything all at once. We see you all out there. Alex has been fighting in the streets, at home, and in the courts as well. So we welcome her taking some time out of her busy schedule to be here. Thank you, Alex.
Hi, I'll be very, very, very brief. I don't know what to say. I think you've covered it all, really. I'm part of Extinction Rebellion, Don't Pay UK, Fuel Poverty Action. I'd like to see all of you join us in April for the big one. We need to unite to survive and get all our campaigns out there on the street. One of the reasons I really love working with Fuel Poverty Action and the Energy For All campaign, because I do understand, you know, like the vulnerable people in society are really going to suffer with all these energy prices, but so are the middle people like myself. You know, I live in social housing, and yes, I'm in one of those buildings that are covered in mold and damp. You know, we've all had pneumonia. I've had pneumonia for 3 months now. And most of my tenants, residents who live here are living in a molded, infested homes. Out of 54 flats, 8 of them have had to be decanted twice, you know, in a couple of years, because the mold is creeping up through the building. This is because of faulty infrastructure and just bad management. But we've also had 10 years of neglect from this company. So it's not just private landlords, it's social housing as well who are failing us. The reason I need this Energy For All to work for us is that to make us live in these houses, we have now got humidifiers. So they're charging up the amount of energy. We don't know how much it's going to cost us. We have to keep the heating on and the windows open to get rid of the mold. So our energy and our things are just going out through the window. Our energy, our landlords are saying, well, that's up to you if you want to do it like that, but we can't afford to live like this anymore. So Energy For All would be great for us, and that's why we've signed on, and Extinction Rebellion have signed on with it as well. And yeah, come and join us, fight for your campaign and fight for us all to unite to survive. And thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Stu, and thank you, John, for allowing me to be part of your campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for all the work that you're doing with us and with others as well. So now we're on to our penultimate speaker. Fuel Poverty Action, we use a range of tactics to bring about change, from a manifesto to petitions to warm-ups as well, one of our specialities. But now we're going to hear from groups that are, of course, going even further and risking life, limb, and liberty as well to demand the common sense measures we need to bring down bills and emissions as well. Indigo Rumblow is an old comrade of a few of us at FPA and works with both Just Stop Oil and Insulate Britain, both of which have signed on to the manifesto. Welcome, Indy.
Thank you, Stu, and thank you everyone here tonight. What a wonderful group of people coming together. And yeah, I want to say that both the groups, Insulate Britain and Just Stop Oil, fully back this manifesto. And we thank everyone who's put time and energy into making it happen, because it started to do what so many people in power don't do, which is connect the dots between these crises. It's not just about the end of the month or the end of the world problems. It's about looking at them both and how they're interlinked together. It's about not us being pitted against each other, but us fighting together. This manifesto shows us that it's the people against the government and the fossil fuel companies, and that's what's going to make us a world that's worth living in now and in the future. Because we know that the climate crisis and this cost of living crisis have the same root. That's the fossil fuel companies' massive greed and our government just allowing them to reap this destruction upon us. And they don't want us to deal with any of these issues. And when we do try and deal with them, they want to try and shut us up. That's why we've seen this wave of anti-strike laws, wave of anti-protest bills and anti-migrant bills. And in the face of repression like this, we need to come together and we have to resist. We have to say, no, this is not happening on our watch. Their single strongest weapon is to divide us, but when we come together, we are unstoppable and very, very powerful. It's important that we campaign in any ways that we can do. I myself got so frustrated with writing so many letters, going on many marches, and took to the M25 with Insulate Britain and have a suspended prison sentence for this. And I will continue blocking roads, and I will continue taking action until I see action from this government. We know that new oil is a death sentence for millions of people around the world. And we know that, but things are changing. The Welsh and Scottish governments, all the major political parties apart from the Tories, are supporting the demand to stop licensing new oil and gas. Even the banks and insurance companies are trying to get out of it, some of them anyway. And who's stopping it though? It's the government. And we know that people want cheaper bills, they want more renewables, they want good insulation, free public transport, they want to tax these companies that are polluting our planet, and even oil workers are calling for a just transition. But who's stopping it? It's the government. Over half of the people in Britain are saying we need to get off new oil and gas. Even some Tory voters are supporting more wind and solar. But who's stopping it? It's the government. So what are we going to do about it? At the end of April, we're coming together for an indefinite wave of action. We're going to be slow marching in the streets, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's the most tried and tested method of protest. And even though the government have tried to put in an extra law stopping slow marching, the Lords have voted it down. So it's still just about legal. We're going to be slow marching around the streets of London, around Westminster, until they stop new oil and gas. And we'd love to see some Energy for All banners out with us. So please come down. We'll be at 7 AM on weekdays and 12 PM on Saturdays. And yeah, you can sign up here. We'd love to see you there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Indigo. I hope everyone brought their diaries. Lots of positive reactions from the audience during that one, I think, in solidarity to everything that your activists are doing for us. So now we come to our final speaker of the evening, an MP that has served his constituency for over 25 years now, over 4 of which were spent as the Labour Party Shadow Chancellor. John has been a regular at FPA events and protests for many years now, and has a similar record of campaigning for visionary and progressive demands in our politics. So please welcome finally MP for Hayes and Harlington, John McDonnell.
First of all, thanks a lot for inviting me. I've signed the manifesto and I've just tweeted it out as well. I can't look. There's not much for me to say. It's all been said. I can't think. I've just looked at who's here. It's a bit like watching my life pass in front of me, all the different people I've campaigned with over the years. And I can't think of better people I'd like to spend my evening with. So thank you for that. The second thing I wanted to say is just simply this. The reason I've signed it, the reason I'm here, is because I feel a sense of urgency now. There's a real sense of urgency, both in terms of what's happening in my own community, the suffering that's gone on, but also what's happening in terms of the hardship that people are facing right the way across our country. But then also, exactly as others have said, that sense of urgency that this is linked, this is a crisis, but it's linked to the big crisis, which is what's happening to our planet itself. They are desperately linked. And in my own constituency, it's exactly as Alex has said. I've got people exactly like Alex living in conditions which no human being should be allowed to live in, and the risk to their life and limb, that the risk to their health is appalling. And then in addition to that we've got people who are absolutely struggling to get by and are now in considerable debt as well. And when I thought, is this just my constituency, I was looking at the figures. On fuel poverty, I know you've had lots of stats tonight, but on fuel poverty, October 2021, I was involved in the debate. We were saying 4.5 million in fuel poverty. October 2022, 6.7, and by April this year, it'll be another couple of million. And I was looking at who is in fuel poverty. And Paul is not with us at the moment, but it's people with disability. Kay has mentioned carers, it's carers as well. But in addition to that, obviously, it's people just with low incomes. And that's as a result of 13 years of austerity, of pay freezes and cuts in benefits. We've now got, just in this last year on debt, people's debt has gone up 72 billion in the last year as a result of the prices that they've had to borrow to pay, particularly around energy. We've got an epidemic of insecurity. The reason there's a sense of urgency is because actually we need to have a sense of anger about this as well. People have mentioned the profits of the fuel companies, 174 billion in profit last year, 2021. The UK big four energy companies, 9.3 billion. The gas and electricity distribution monopolies, 6.3 billion. These are monopolies that are ripping us off. I agree we should tax them, but I agree with Ian as well, to be honest, bring them back into public ownership, because in that way we can have democratic control of the supply of our own energy. Final point from me, really, the reason I support this charter, because it covers, this manifesto covers so many issues that we're confronting in my community at the moment, both in terms of access to energy, decent housing, and at the same time making sure that we ensure this is accepted as a universal benefit, a universal service. I want to live in a society where we have basic human rights to health, to education, a decent home, security, and living in a decent environment. The only way that will be provided is if we have universal basic services, which are not on the basis of how much you can pay, but what you need. And what this does, it actually makes it clear to people how access to energy is a universal service that we should have access to, but it's a universal right as well. And if we can establish that principle in this campaign, it will inspire so many other people. So my view, yes, I'm here as an MP because I'll do everything I can in Parliament, working on all those MPs of any political party that will support this manifesto. But I also realise actually things don't actually change as a result of Parliament. They change as a result of what happens in our communities and in our society. And that's why, yes, it is about time we took to the streets, and we did it in large numbers, and we did it with power. Solidarity.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. There you have it. Thank you to all of our speakers once again, and to all of you for joining us, in every group and individual that has signed the manifesto so far. So in the meantime, please write to your MP, ask them to sign the manifesto, as some of those joining us tonight have. Next, Fuel Poverty Action will be on the streets on April 1st to celebrate April Fuels Day, and we'll be supporting the big one in London. We'll also be, I expect, supporting Just Stop Oil as well. So yeah, please keep an eye on the campaign. We'll be in Parliament before you know it.